Hey, I want to make a quick video today talking about something I said in a video earlier this week. Well, I want to say it's going to be a quick video, but it might take a while to actually say what I want to say. And I'm hoping it'll be quiet while I'm saying it. My kids are outside the door right here playing magic cards with their friends, which always kind of makes me kind of sad. In fact, my son asked me the other night, why do you always look sad when we're playing magic cards? And I'm like, well, because every time I see you playing magic cards, it makes me feel more and more like I'm never going to have grandchildren. So it does make me a little sad. But hopefully they'll be quiet so I can get through this. What I wanted to talk about was the other day when I said that holding gun shops or gun manufacturers responsible when someone misuses a gun is just as ridiculous as holding Ford responsible when someone runs over someone with their car or has a DUI accident and injures someone with their car. Well, apparently that made a lot of people freak out because they did not like that whole idea, because they want to hold gun shops and gun manufacturers responsible, so they use the logic of saying, well, you're absolutely wrong, because there's lots of times where if someone got in a DUI and hurt someone, you'd be responsible. And they said, you as a bar owner should know that. And yes, I as a bar owner, I do know that, or a former bar owner, I do know that. I know that if someone came into my business and they were intoxicated, I served them more alcohol and then let them leave, I would be responsible. I'd have some liability for what happened after they left my establishment. Or if they came into my establishment and drank until they were intoxicated and I let them leave, I would have some liability. So yeah, there are cases where I would have liability if they left my bar, got into a DUI accident and hurt someone. I could be liable for that. But that scenario there, that analogy does not apply to firearms. It doesn't apply at all, because you see, I did something illegal. I served someone that was already intoxicated, or I allowed someone to get intoxicated in my bar and then leave. That's not legal. Selling a gun to someone who can legally possess it, that's legal. There's been no illegal act on the gun shop. Now, if they sell to someone that isn't able to buy a gun, that's an illegal act. They'd be responsible for that. But you see, the fact that they have background checks that are federally and state provided, that takes the liability away from them. As long as they sell to someone that the state tells them it's okay, or the federal government tells them it's okay, they have no liability. In fact, you people that want to hold gun shops and gun manufacturers liable are the same people that promote background checks. So if you promote a background check, you're taking the liability away from them by design. Because you're setting up a system saying, we're the judges and we're going to decide who can and can't have a gun, and you're going to abide by our decision. So therefore, you've taken all their liability away. So they only sell to people that are legally able to buy that product. So therefore, the whole coming into a bar, getting drunk and driving DUI and injuring someone, that analogy is not applicable. What you'd have to say is, okay, some guy that was well-dressed, middle-aged, white guy, clean-cut, sober, completely sober and coherent, goes into a liquor store, buys a nice bottle of brandy, has a little conversation with the clerk, and then goes home. If that person then in that car decides, well, I'm going to go ahead and drink this brandy, and they drink all of it on their way home, and they drive up into their neighbor's yard and run over their wife or their dog, or whichever one's worse, I don't know. Well then, yeah, that's a bad thing, but they broke the law and they drank that liquor on their way home. That liquor store should in no way be responsible for that. And I can't believe anyone out there would say, yes, that liquor store clerk should go to jail, or that liquor store should go to jail because they sold to this middle-aged, sober, legally capable of buying alcohol guy who then went out and broke the law afterwards. Because when you try to hold gun shops and gun manufacturers responsible when that happens, that's what you're doing. You're saying something just like that. It's ridiculous. It's like saying, well, Office Depot should be responsible if someone comes in and buys a pack of pre-sharpened pencils, then runs out into the parking lot and starts, stabbing other people in the neck with pencils. Office Depot shouldn't have sold them those pencils because, they're going to go stab ugly people with them. So how would they know that? They don't judge people's character, they sell a product. And gun manufacturers and gun dealers don't judge people's character. They let the government do that. The government has insisted that they be able to do that. So in fact, it opens gun dealers up to even more liability, because if someone passes a background check and then they said, I'm not going to sell to you, they could get sued because they've already been told by the government you can buy that gun, and the gun shop told them they couldn't. So no liability lays on them unless they break the law and sell to someone they shouldn't have sold to, which just isn't the case. Now, I guess you could create really far-fetched scenarios where they could have some liability, like if you're working in the gun shop and some guy runs in holding a still smoking hot AK-47 and you just heard gunfire outside and he's like, I'm out of ammo, I need some, Allah Akbar, and he's got a tablecloth on his head and you go, okay, here's some more ammo. Well then, yeah, then there might be a case there that you probably should have thought better of that. But outside of a crazy scenario like that, all you're doing is selling to someone that can legally purchase it and the government has told you can purchase it. Now, a lot of people say, well, guns are different though, because guns are just created to kill people. They're just made for people to do bad things with. And that's garbage. That doesn't hold water at all. If you look at the number of times guns are used in just recreational shooting, sport shooting, self-defense, used by the military or law enforcement for legal purposes, if you put that into a pie chart and then you made a little slice for when is a gun used, what percentage of time are they used for nefarious means like committing a crime or a murder, that little slice wouldn't even be visible. You wouldn't even feed Kate Moss with that little slice. You wouldn't even see it. So that's ridiculous. Guns are not just created for bad things. They're created for good things, and they do good every day, every day, far more than they do bad. So that's a ridiculous argument. It just doesn't make any sense. That's just like saying alcohol is only there to get people so people can get drunk and smash their cars into each other. That's not what alcohol is there for. That's not what it's used for 99% of the time. So both of those arguments are equally ridiculous, but people keep making them. Now, some people justify their arguments by saying, oh, but the gun manufacturers, they obviously have something nefarious going on because they get special protection. No, they don't get special protection. That's a lie from people like Bloomberg, etc. All they get protection-wise is basically the same thing as hate crime laws. Like when we decide that there are minority groups of people that don't possess the ability to completely defend themselves, yet they're being targeted at a high rate by people that are preying on them, then we pass hate crime laws to protect those people. And most of the people that want to hold gun manufacturers responsible are all for hate crime laws. Well, what the government did was say, gun manufacturers and gun sales, gun shops specifically, don't hold any liability for these things in 99.999% of the cases. Yet they're being driven out of business by elitists and social engineers like Bloomberg who decide that they know what's best for everybody and they want to disarm everyone. They're saying, well, we can't beat these people legally because it's their right to do what they're doing and they don't hold any responsibility for doing anything wrong. But what we'll do is we'll just drag them all through court until they go bankrupt. It's easy to bankrupt a small mom and pop gun shop because they're usually working on a shoestring budget. And even companies like Smith & Wesson are not big when compared to other like Fortune 500 companies like Exxon or IBM or Microsoft. They're tiny, basically a mom and pop business themselves when you look at them in that context. So people like Bloomberg were knowing, I've got billions of dollars and I got lawyers on retainer. I can just bankrupt these companies with no legal justification at all. And the courts saw this, politicians saw this, and they said, no, you cannot file these frivolous lawsuits. You have to have just cause. Just like if Ford, like I say, made a car and someone bought that car and then went and got drunk and ran over someone, Ford's not responsible for that. But if Ford made a car that had bad brakes and that person bought the car, went out and ran over someone because the brakes failed, Ford would be responsible. That would be their level of liability. And that's what the gun manufacturers have too. If someone buys a gun from an FFL and goes out and uses it incorrectly, that manufacturer would be not responsible at all for anything that person did who did it unjustly or illegally. But if Smith & Wesson sells a gun where, it's defective and it blows up in someone's face and injures them, they are just as liable as any other company that ever made a product where they were actually responsible for the damages caused by it. That the damages weren't caused by someone breaking the law. So that whole they're specially protected, it's garbage. Just garbage, doesn't make any sense. So I just wanted to say that today. If you're going to make analogies, make sure your analogies are applicable. Because that whole thing of a bartender serving a drunk and then them going to get an accident, that's not applicable. Like I say, unless a gun shop decides to sell to someone who the government told them can't have it, then it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. Gun manufacturers only sell to people they're legally told they can sell to, distributors, FFLs, etc. And then those FFLs only sell to people the government says they can. In cases where they break those rules, they are held responsible. In cases where they follow the rules, they bear no liability. You would not place that type of liability on any other business. So do not do it to gun manufacturers. And do not use that false line of they are overwhelmingly protected against things, because they are not. They are just protected against frivolous lawsuits put forth by powerful people that are targeting them. Just like how hate crimes protect targeted minorities, this is protecting a targeted, business that no other business suffers this. People like Bloomberg don't go after Ford or GE or anything like that and try to drive them out of business through lawsuits. For one, they wouldn't be able to because they can afford to defend themselves. So this is just basically a hate crime bill when you're protecting manufacturers from frivolous lawsuits. So if you're one of those people that wants to say, well, these gun manufacturers should be responsible, gun manufacturers should only be responsible if they produce a product that's dangerous, and the dealers should only be responsible if they break the law. And selling to someone who later goes and does something wrong because they're a person and they made their own decision, that's not doing something wrong. So quit making that argument. You ain't even my real dad.